Have you ever heard a rustling outside your window on a dark night? Or noticed strange footprints outside your house? Perhaps it's just the wind and the play of light. Or perhaps it's something far more sinister. Today we're going to talk about a creature that has terrified farmers, hunters, and random witnesses for decades. Is the Chupacabra a bloodthirsty monster or fiction? Watch this clip to the end and you'll find out the shocking truth. The legend of the Chupacabra originated in the 1990s of the last century in Latin America. The first reports about the mysterious creature came from Puerto Rico, where farmers found their animals dead with sucked blood. There were no signs of a struggle or the usual predator bites, just two neat holes in the victims' necks. According to eyewitness descriptions, the Chupacabra is a small creature that resembles a mixture of reptile and dog. It has red, glowing eyes, a barbed ridge along its back, and long claws. Some say it moves on 2 legs, others on 4, but all have one thing in common: fear of the unknown. A wave of panic quickly spread across Latin America and then around the world. Mexico, Brazil, the United States, Russia, everywhere began to appear testimonies of people who saw a strange creature or found its victims. Scientists, of course, could not ignore this phenomenon. Many biologists tried to find a rational explanation, writing off the attacks to wild dogs, coyotes, or even rare diseases. However, none of these explanations could completely eliminate all the mysteries surrounding the Chupacabra. One possible explanation is mutations. Some researchers suggest that the Chupacabra is a mutated animal, perhaps the result of experimentation or exposure to radiation. For example, coyotes with unusually smooth skin and no fur were found in Mexico. They looked really creepy. Another version says that the Chupacabra is a creature of alien origin. Proponents of this theory point to the fact that many cases of attacks coincided with UFO sightings. Perhaps this animal either came from another planet or was left by aliens for some purpose. Of course, there are skeptics who argue that the Chupacabra is just a myth born of fears and rumors. They cite cases of mass hysteria when people begin to believe in something that does not exist due to pressure from society and the media. However, it cannot be denied that this myth has real victims. Farmers were losing dozens of animals overnight, and no one could give an accurate explanation as to who killed them. 1. The Cursed Farm, Colombia. On the outskirts of a small village, farmer Rodrigo proudly inspected his chicken coop every morning. His family lived off eggs and meat, but one night something terrible happened. Awakened by the alarming barking of dogs, Rodrigo ran outside and froze. The air smelled damp, but there was no sound or movement. The dogs whimpered in the corner, and the chicken coop gate opened wide open. Inside, dozens of dead chickens. Not a single trace of blood, only neat round wounds on their necks. Rodrigo rushed to the surveillance camera set up outside the barn. The recording was clear. The shadow of a hunched creature darted across the yard, then, moving unnaturally fast, disappeared into the darkness. 2. Nightmare in Texas. Mary and her family lived on a ranch in Texas. Sheep were their main source of income. One morning they found the entire pen empty. There was no sign of wolves or coyotes around, not a scrap of wool. Just dead bodies, no blood. A neighbor, coming home late at night, reported seeing a strange shadow moving on 2 paws. Red eyes flashed in the darkness, and the figure disappeared into the woods. 3. Lost in the Mountains, Chile. Diego was an avid hiker. He loved solo hikes in the mountains. One night while camping, he heard a strange rustling sound. It sounded like someone was sneaking around behind him. Turning on his flashlight, he managed to see a creature with dark barbs along its spine staring at him with glowing eyes. It made a hissing sound and in an instant disappeared among the trees. In the morning, Diego found deep claw marks near the tent. 4. Blood trail, Brazil. The shepherd Marcus was the first to see it. One of the cows lay motionless with empty eye sockets. There were 2 tiny but perfectly even holes in her neck. No sign of a struggle, no splattered blood. The tracks leading to the river were strange. It was as if something had walked on 2 legs and then switched to all 4s. When Marcus traced them, they suddenly disappeared into the wet ground, as if the creature had simply vaporized. 5th Night Hunter, Ukraine. Hunter Nikolai is used to wild animals, but that night he realized that he was facing no ordinary predator. The forest was too quiet. Even the birds did not make a sound. Suddenly a shadow flashed in front of him. Nikolai pointed his flashlight and saw a creature that was jumping incredibly fast. When he fired, the bullet only whistled through the air. The creature disappeared. Later, at the place where it stood, Nikolai found scorched grass and claw marks. 6. Ghost Killer, Argentina. In the village of San Pedro, children found their dog dead. Her body was intact, but there were 2 tiny, symmetrical holes in her neck. During the night, the parents heard someone scrambling outside the window. Her father turned on the flashlight, but saw only a dark silhouette, which disappeared in a flash. In the morning, they found footprints near the door that looked like monkey prints, but with long claws. 7. Monster in a dump, Russia. At an abandoned dump near Siberia, locals found the remains of a strange creature. It was hairless with skin resembling snake scales. It had long claws and sharp teeth. Local fishermen claimed to have seen a similar creature sneaking along the shore at night. A few days later, the remains disappeared. 8. Bird attack, Mexico. In a village, residents found dead chickens and ducks every morning. One night, one of the farmers decided to ambush them. He saw something moving at a gallop. It looked like a skinny dog, but with long limbs and glowing eyes. When the farmer took aim, the creature let out a shrill cry and disappeared into the darkness. 9. Howling in the night, Peru. Farmer Alejandro awoke to an eerie, inhuman howl. It was not like the cry of a wolf or a puma. Walking out into the yard, he saw that his goats were dead. There was something like a dark shadow over the corral that slid quickly toward the woods. In the morning, Alejandro found strange footprints on the ground. They looked like paw prints, but with webbing between the toes. 10th, Forest Terror, Spain. Javier, a tourist, was hiking in the Pyrenees. Deep in the forest, he sensed that he was being followed. As he entered a clearing, he saw a short but clearly predatory creature in front of him. Its body was covered with smooth skin, and its eyes burned with a red light. It let out a low, wrenching growl and stepped forward. Javier rushed to escape, and when he looked back, the creature was gone, as if it had vanished into thin air. 11th Night Eyes, Guatemala. Manuel worked as a security guard on a farm where cattle often went missing. One night he heard dogs howling and then silence. When he went outside, he noticed red glowing eyes in the bushes. They disappeared in a second, but a moment later something jumped out of the darkness right at him. He managed to dodge it, and when he raised the lantern, there was no one there. But the next morning, huge tracks were found on the ground, which no known animal leaves. 12th. Screaming in the dark, Venezuela. Pedro was returning home through a dense forest. He felt a hoarse, piercing sound, similar to a child's cry, but with a metallic sound. He stopped and tried to find the source of the sound, but then he noticed a shadow that quickly flashed between the trees. Pedro broke into a run, but the sound still lingered just behind him. He reached home, mended the door, and at first he found some rags on the ground, as if something clawed was trying to get through. 13. Demon's Pasty, Puerto Rico. On an old farm near San Juan, Carlos, a farmer, decided to set up a paste to catch the man who had been strangling his chickens. In the night, the camera recorded something humped and thin with long paws approaching the pen. But instead of going into the pasture, the creature stopped, looked directly at the camera, and disappeared. The only images left on the recording were the black light eyes and a muffled hissing sound which the camera could not properly recognize. 14. The missing cows, Paraguay. Jorge and his brother were working on a ranch when they noticed that several cows were missing. They went to look for them and found the bodies deep in the forest. Each cow had 2 small holes in its neck, and not a single drop of blood. What was even more frightening was that there were no traces of large predators around, only strange round prints, as if something had moved on 2 legs. 15. Dark Silhouette, Philippines. Marcos, a truck driver, was driving through a mountainous road when he noticed something on the side of the road. It was a tall, writhing figure that looked thin beyond belief. As he drove closer, the creature took one jump and disappeared into the forest. The next day, several dead dogs with characteristic wounds on their necks were found in the same area. 16. The Pet Killer, Kazakhstan. In a small village, someone was killing dogs and cats every night. The locals were afraid to go out after sunset. One day, a boy decided to wait for the invisible predator. He was sitting near a barn with a flashlight when he suddenly noticed something passing quickly by. He screamed and his parents ran outside. All they saw was bloody footprints on the ground and scattered fur.
17. Fear at school, Bolivia. A guard at a rural school heard strange noises every night, as if someone was scratching the walls. One day he decided to check the area and saw a silhouette in the darkness. It was standing on 2 legs, with long claws and hairless skin. The creature made a hissing sound and then instantly disappeared. The next day, the dead bodies of rabbits were found on the school grounds with blood sucked out. 18. The Legend of the Old Monastery, Spain. A ruined monastery in the mountains was known as a cursed place. A group of tourists decided to explore it. At night, they heard a strange rustling and ominous hissing. One of the boys turned on a flashlight and for a moment saw a black shadow jump out of a second-story window. When they ran back to the village, the locals told them it was a Chupacabra, a creature that appears in the area from time to time. 19th. Night raids, Georgia. Villagers noticed that their chickens were disappearing and decided to set a trap. At night, they saw a silhouette. It was tall, wrinkled, with long legs. Its eyes were glowing red, and it moved completely silently. When one of the villagers threw a stone, the creature simply disappeared into the shadows. But in the morning, strange prints remained on the ground, 3-toed, with sharp claws. 20. The Dark Passenger, USA, New Mexico. A taxi driver was driving through the desert late at night when he saw a lone figure on the side of the road. It was hunched over, with long limbs and dark eyes. As soon as he approached, the creature made one huge leap and ended up right on the road. The driver braked sharply, but when he looked up, no one was there. He drove back to town in a cold sweat, and the next day, he heard the news. The local farmers had lost their sheep again. 21. The Invisible Predator, Mexico. Farmer Julio heard his dogs barking furiously every night, but when he went out to check, he saw no one. One day, he decided to ambush them. Armed with a rifle, he sat down near the pen and waited. Suddenly, the dogs howled and ran in different directions. Something hissed in the air, as if someone was breathing heavily, but no one was visible, until he shone his flashlight on the ground. and a shadow without a body flashed past him. In the morning, several chickens disappeared again. 22. The last passenger, Brazil. Taxi driver Luis was returning home after his shift. The road was deserted when he suddenly noticed a figure standing on the side of the road. He slowed down, but no one approached. When he got out, he saw large paw prints disappearing into the darkness. When he got back into the car, the rearview mirror suddenly cracked, and a shrill hissing sound was heard inside. 23rd. Missing children, Honduras. In a small village, there was a legend that the Chupacabra stole not only cattle, but also children. One day, a boy named Daniel went for a walk in the forest and never returned. He was found 3 days later sitting by a stream, completely pale and shivering. When asked what happened, he whispered, "It was watching me all night." 24. Hunter by Night, Argentina. The ranch's surveillance cameras recorded something large and bipedal running past the ranch in the middle of the night. The next morning, 5 goats were found to be dead, and their blood had completely disappeared. The farmer decided to install additional cameras, but the next night they all malfunctioned, as if something had created a strong electromagnetic pulse. 25. The Cursed Cave, Colombia. 2 friends decided to explore a cave in the mountains where, according to the locals, the Chupacabra lived. Inside, they found animal bones and strange scratches on the walls. Suddenly, one of them heard something sneaking around behind them. They ran out of there, but from then on, neither of them could sleep. They dreamt of red eyes watching them from the darkness. 26. The Shadow on the Roof, Peru. Carlos woke up to a strange knocking on the roof. Looking out the window, he saw a silhouette with long legs. When he screamed, the creature disappeared. In the morning, claw marks and scraps of fur were found on the roof. A few days later, several goats disappeared in a neighboring village. 27th. Eyes in the Field, Chile. Farmer Antonio was grazing his cattle when suddenly the cows began to move restlessly. He looked ahead and saw a pair of red eyes in the tall grass. When he approached, the creature quickly ran away, but the prints of 3 long fingers with sharp claws remained on the ground. 28. Black Fear, Cuba. Fishermen in a small coastal village said that the Chupacabra not only attacks animals, but also comes out of the sea. One day, a boat disappeared. A few days later, it was found, but there was no one on board, except for bloody scratches on the wooden planks. 29. The Forbidden Path, Ecuador. Children were playing by the river when one of them decided to follow a narrow path into the jungle. Suddenly, he saw something moving among the trees, a hunched, hairless creature slowly creeping toward him. He screamed and ran back, and when the adults came to check, they found only paw prints and a strange smell in the air.
30. The Legend of the Night Market, Philippines. At the Manila Night Market, several vendors told us that chickens disappear every night. One day, one of them left a camera near the cage. The next day, he watched the recording. Something was moving so fast on the screen that the camera could only capture a blurry shadow and a pair of red eyes looking directly into the lens. 31. The Cage That Broke, Mexico. Farmer Rodrigo used to lock his chickens in a sturdy metal cage every night. But one morning he found it open, although the lock was intact. There were no chickens inside, only sharp claw marks and a few drops of blood. The cameras didn't record anything, but one of the neighbors saw something big and skinny crawling along the fence that night. 32. The Mysterious Observer, Guatemala. A woman named Elena often stayed late at work. One day, as she was walking home, she felt someone following her. When she turned around, she saw a pair of red eyes in the bushes. The next day, her neighbor told her that during the night someone had cut a hole in the fence and taken some sheep. 33. The Dark Bridge, Brazil. Two friends were returning on a motorcycle across an old bridge. Suddenly, the engine stalled, and they heard a strange wheezing noise coming from under the bridge. When one of them shone his flashlight down, he saw something large with long claws instantly disappear into the water. The motorcycle started on its own, and they sped away. 34. The Smell of Fear, Chile. People in the village said that the Chupacabra emits a strong, unpleasant odor when it approaches. Farmer Ricardo didn't believe it until one evening he smelled a strange stench near his house. He went outside and heard a rustling behind the barn, but when he looked in, no one was there. The next morning, his goats lay dead without a drop of blood. 35. Voices in the Night, Peru. In a small village, people heard someone making strange sounds at night, like a child crying. When one of the hunters went to check it out, he came across paw prints near the source of the sound. Suddenly, two red eyes shone out of the darkness, and he heard a piercing hissing sound. He ran away, and the next morning his rifle was found, with deep scratches on the butt. But if the Chupacabra is real, why has it never been caught? Perhaps it has something to do with its intelligence. Some say it can sense danger and avoid traps. Another theory is that it has the ability to camouflage itself. There are many creatures in nature that are able to blend in with their environment, and perhaps the Chupacabra is one of them. Or maybe the Chupacabra is not one creature, but several. For example, different species of mutated animals that behave the same way. That could explain the conflicting descriptions. One of the most surprising facts is that the Chupacabra has been attempted on camera more than once. There are plenty of nighttime surveillance videos of the strange creatures on the internet, but none of them provide 100% proof. There are crazier theories. Some believe that the Chupacabra is a werewolf that can turn into a human, so it's impossible to catch. But whether you believe in the Chupacabra or not, it has already become part of popular culture. Movies, books, games. This image has infiltrated people's minds and doesn't seem to be going away. Perhaps someday scientists will be able to give an accurate answer. Is the Chupacabra real? Until then, this mystery remains unsolved, continuing to feed human imagination and fear. What do you think? Is the Chupacabra a real creature, or is it just a legend? Write in the comments, as well as subscribe to the channel and put a like if you liked this episode. There are more mysterious stories ahead of us that may change your view of the world.